Hi, I'm Mario Evon, and you're listening to Trth, a weekly edutainment podcast discussing the things that most people are afraid to, but from a Jamaican perspective. From relationships, sex and sexuality, to the ins and outs of entrepreneurship, in this space we speak about almost anything with the intention to inspire, educate, entertain, and create a fair and balanced space where your truth shall become your power and set you free. Check. Speaking on that?
Yes.
All right.
I want to find out.
All right, guys. Welcome to this next episode of Trth. And this is me, of course, Mario Evon. And you know, there's never an episode without my father. I should say a season. So in season 1, I believe I spoke to him maybe twice, right? We spoke about Are All Vaginas Created Equal, which was my very first guest episode, and he never knew what you were speaking about, just like today. And the second time we spoke about old time Jamaica. So a little bit of what we speak about today may come back, but other things we spoke about as well. So, but today, to kind of contrast against my episode last week as a Kingston-born person with rural parents, my experience of blackness and in Jamaica specifically and going abroad was a bit different. So those who listened to and liked that episode gave me a lot of feedback. So I thought, why not speak to my father, who was born in 1942 in Jamaica, and get his perspective of his journey coming from rural Jamaica, moving to town, going abroad and all of these things, right? So, of course, let's start at the beginning. So, the listeners know you were born in Westmoreland, in Moreland Hill, right?
Yes.
Home delivery.
Most people do not know what Moreland Hill, where Moreland Hill is.
Right.
If you are going to Negril from Savlamar, when you get to Little London, a right turn take you about 3 miles in to Moreland Hill, and like it says, it is a hill. You can stay up there and look all the way to the sea in Broughton.
Right, in Broughton. And
so it is between Little London and Negril, but on a tangent. And
as I said, you would have been home delivery days, so you never born in a hospital, you had nanas.
Oh yes, I was born on Thursday the 27th of August at 7 a.m. by a nana called Tan Tan.
All right, well anyway, this is not so much about the history, this is about blackness. So when you were born into the world in 1942, what was happening in Jamaica at the time? We weren't yet independent.
Well, that was during World War II.
Right.
Because World War II didn't finish until 1945. So I really didn't know about World War II, but because it was such a short time, within a short while after that, all the stories about World War II occupied the country news. And these stories were about shortages, about having to turn off out light, not turn off, because we didn't have any electricity.
Right.
So if you had a lamp, it should be turned off at nights, because if it was lit, the enemy could spot you and bomb you and all that, because we weren't in the war. We had a lot of people who were members of the British Empire.
Right.
And so they left here and they served in the war, and so we were colonies, right? And so I suppose the enemy would hit any colony they wanted to, if they wanted to.
Jamaica,
so there was a whole lot to talk about World War II by the time, because I was like 3 when World War II was finished. But by the time I started to go to primary school, say at 7, things started to change, and that sort of talk decreased.
What was the landscape like in terms of races in Jamaica, and how did those races fit? How did they feel about themselves in this context of colonization?
And what happened is that we, in that part of the country, everybody was black, right? So, however,
Westmoreland never have only Indians.
However, yes, we had a lot of Indians. So, however, West Indies Sugar Company, which is the company that owned the Froome factory,
Right.
was the main employer of labour. And all of the managers and the CEOs and even the doctor in the clinic, they were British people, they were white. And I was diagnosed as having rheumatic fever. And I used to be taken to get a penicillin injection by the white doctor at the clinic every month. And I didn't look forward to it. I used to hate doctors. And even now I'm not too sure if I like it. But
And you know. So would that have been our government system health center kind of?
yes, the
setup?
health centers were around. But we in that area, because the main thing was a sugar company.
Mm-hmm.
They had their own everything. They had health center. They had a railway line that carried the sugar cane from like Delftland, which is next door to Moreland Hill, to the factory at Froome.
But they tended to the people in the
But they
community?
tended to people because most of the persons were their
Were
employees.
children of employees.
Children of
Right.
employees.
Right.
So you could go to Savlamar, to Little London, to clinic.
Mm-hmm.
But you could go to West Indies Sugar Company clinic, which was like going to the private doctor.
Right.
Of course, you had private doctor.
Right. Your father was a sugarcane worker for them?
My father was not a sugar cane worker for them, but he used to plant his own cane and sell to them. So you still fall under that group where they were a worker or a planter selling to the sugar company. So you get that sort of benefit. I even later on got a scholarship from them too.
Right. But as a young child, though, most times well, in my experience, I was saying that as a child, I never really had a racial construct. Our children kind of just grow and have fun.
Well, the only...
But you knew, in your mind, you could differentiate between races as a young child, like under 8.
Yes. Well, as I told you, the white people there were the people that were British people who work for Trth and Lyle, who are the British owners of West Indies Sugar Company.
Mm-hmm.
And so we know them, and they were living in what we call now gated communities. So we never really have much
mixing with them.
With the whites.
But you knew they were from UK.
We know they're from UK, and we know that we didn't really mix too much because they were behind their thing, and their children were sent to England and to Kingston to school and all of that. So there wasn't really a lot of mixing, and so race never really played a big part. The biggest white man I know was every house in the country had Jesus with blue eye and long hair, a picture.
Right. It was a standard thing in the country house.
And maybe still.
Yeah, I think I remember seeing them. I know the picture too. He had long brown hair,
Yes,
and it's just a very central portrait of him.
Yeah, looked like a hippie.
Right, kind of. What about your parents and the narratives that they taught you about race? What kind of stuff you...
No, this one is interesting.
Yeah, who you want to start
in
with?
that my mother didn't subscribe to that. But my father, his mother was a light-skinned, long-haired woman. Mm-hmm. And he stressed all the time that we are of Scottish descent. While my mother always said... Yeah, joker. We come from Africa, And
but
so,
what was her maiden name, by the way? Yeah,
her maiden name was Malcolm.
Your mother, your father's mother.
Gooden.
Gooden. The Gooden. That's where the Gooden comes from.
And Gooden spelled with an E, A-N-N-E. And she would be upset if you call her Aunt Annie.
And she would have had to have married a Guthrie.
And she got married to a Guthrie who was Alfred.
Who was black?
Who was black? I mean, maybe your color.
Brown.
Light brown.
Okay, that will explain some of it. All right, and I see that Guthrie is Scottish, which I mentioned in my episode as well.
Yes.
So he said we have Scottish descent. Grandma said that we are from Africa. Mm-hmm. And that was her thing.
That was her thing, and she was a smarter one as usual. As usual, women are the smarter one.
Yeah. And what else you would say? I know him to be I never met him, but from what you've told me, he seemed to have strong opinions.
Yeah, both have strong opinions, Just to give you a quick rundown. My father was Labour writer, my mother was PNP. Mm-hmm. My mother was so PNP that she used to go on political platform. My father was a buster man, and you couldn't change him. And his busterism, if that is such a word, came from the fact that Buster had come to Froome Sugar Estate in 1938 and fought for the labourers, right? And that stayed in his mind that this man is a man that means.
So he looked up to him.
Yeah, he looked up. And so it sort of never changed. And so even election day, they go and vote and they come and wave a finger at one another. One had ring the bell. One make
At that time was Westmoreland traditionally a PNP parish as we know it to be minus this last election.
No, not just this election. Sir Clifford Campbell, our first Governor General, was a Westmoreland MP just when Manley, not Michael Norman, lost the federal election. And it was Clifford Campbell was the MP who became our first Governor General in independence. So
he would have been
So he was one of the few Labourites
right.
in Westmoreland, yeah.
What about the role of church? So and church as it relates to culture and race. So and you look like your family was divergent because you have Labourite PNP and you have Adventist, and what was your father?
That's him again. My father was definitely, he's British according to him, Scott.
Yeah.
So he went to Church of England, which you call Anglican now, right? But my mother used to go to Church of England too. So I used to go to Anglican first. And then my mother became Seventh-day Adventist, and a group of them literally put up a little thatch hut in our yard and start the first Seventh-day Adventist church.
In Moreland Hill.
In Moreland Hill. And she being Seventh-day Adventist and he being Anglican, them cool, them know about one another. I mean, I was a pressure.
You suffer.
I have to go to church Saturday and Sunday. And when my mother, no coffee, no smoking, none of that, because that's a part of the church, no pork. And when I go in church with my father, he used to hide his pipe and a stone, wash out his mouth, and we got to church. And on his way back, he took his pipe, light it, and puff and go home, A pipe with tobacco in it, not cigarettes.
Yeah, the church had any role and race for you?
Not really. Most of the people at the church, there's some brown-skinned people who used to sit up front in the church, so we don't ever used to have trouble. Yeah, even though it's like that, there are some front seaters at all church, and that church had a few brown-skinned people that they call Bakra, right? And they used to be there, but we never. I don't know.
People live peacefully.
I personally never see it as race, but the Bakra people used to own some property and all that, and the black people in the village, most of them illiterate labourers, work for them, right? And you used to hear all sorts of story, and they employ the same black people as what we used to call the ranger.
Right.
So if you go and cut them cane, a ranger catch you, ranger carry you to the white boss, and then you're in trouble because the white boss could, not me, but the white boss could beat you and your parents, don't say anything.
Right.
Because
of the relationship.
The whole relationship back then and the dynamics, But I sort of never really know prejudice. And it's the same thing that Westmoreland had a lot of Indian. And so you had Indian and black grow up, and we used to be very mean as children. We talk about coolie and them talk about nigger, and it's not anything derogatory. It's just that one getting at the other sometimes.
But you made a tie with the Bakra. You kind of said literally what I said too, but from that stage, probably coming from slavery, there's an inextricable link between brown complexion and wealth and social status.
Definitely. The Bakra men or the brown men, and frequently the labourers referred to them as the bigger head or the boss. So right now, that's why I don't know nobody call me no boss.
Right, because it links back to that.
Of course it comes back to slavery.
But I also mentioned, which I feel like we look at centuries and think that is a long time ago. But when you look at dilution of culture and habits and behavior, centuries are like seconds in a way.
Yes,
so it takes a long while for people to unlearn.
What I'm telling you here is, call it 70 years ago.
Yeah. And we still suffer from the same.
And we still have the same. We have a lot of our people. Why you think they bleach?
Yeah, they still don't believe.
I mean, when I went to university, when Rex Neckelford was like he's a cultural icon.
Right.
And he used to be very upset with girls straightening out the hair and things like that. And so that time was the days of Afro hairstyle and everything. So I figured that with them long hairpiece now, poor Rex would turn in him grave.
Turn, right? Well, he was around to see a lot of it. So.
Well, the thing about it, as I said, it is, if I away from West Indies Shoe Company, that was managed, all the managers and the CEO and the doctor, they were white people, right? And the next set of property owners, they were the mulatto, the Backerman, and so most of them were brown-skinned people.
Right.
And there was a distance between themselves and the normal village people,
right.
in that they could drive car and we ride donkey and so on. So there was always some of that, but I don't know, maybe I was naive, or maybe that was naive. My mother was somebody who from early tell you that you can do everything regardless of who you are. So she drive a sort of confidence in me that I never think anybody was better because of the color.
You figure you can do whatever you want anyway, so it wouldn't matter. Yes. I was going to ask you if you felt like the fact that everybody in the community probably would have had the village people would have similar status.
Yes.
That even if they were of lighter complexion or Indian, that unified you in a way. Even like you could say, even the poverty unified you in a way because you were living a common life.
It unified you to a certain extent, but let me give you a personal story.
Mm-hmm.
My own grandmother, she had 2 grandchildren who were white, and they were my aunt's children. And one day she said to me,
and when you say white, mixed with black, but leaning more to white or white?
Well, my aunt was black,
mm-hmm.
and they were Jamaica people say high color.
High color.
They was very
light.
Light, and they had curly rather than hair like mine. They had straight hair,
mm-hmm.
and so my grandmother looked at me and said, "See all Mas Paul, which one of the guy them name, when." Wipe him foot and you later around because you see my high color."
Mm-hmm.
And this is my own grandmother who was not white. That's my mother's mother.
Mm-hmm.
And I was vexed with her until now about it, because those 2 children, why they were white? Because my aunt leave country, come to town, and had babies with sailor. And so it's in the end we find out, say, hold on, but this woman was a prostitute. That is my aunt, And yet, my grandmother accepted them more than she accepted me.
Because of the color? Because of the color?
Them have high color.
Right.
Yes.
Very interesting. Move on now to... Coming up now, moving on, because you went a couple places, including boarding school and stuff.
Yes.
When would you say you started to recognize a bigger difference between color, social class, and culture? Because then you would have moved to Kingston eventually.
Yes.
You have any distinctive moments in that journey coming up when maybe?
I still think I was lucky in that most of the time when I was at whichever school, because I board at different time. I leave home from 16 and I've never been back. And when I went to school agriculture, maybe we had the biggest mix in that we had Chinese border. We had very light skin. I can think of 1, 2, 3, about 4 people in my class that were really light, and they could pass, I call them Jamaican white. And then, but we never really see any problem because we're all together.
All Jamaican.
Jamaican. And the boarding school had a system where people have their chores and people rag you, so you all get cut down to one size, even if you had anything in your mind before.
Right, the school created a space of sameness, especially because it was boarding school, so everybody used the same bathroom.
Yes, and when we went in at first, people came in with them ears. I am a KC and I'm a JC and I'm a, and a Monroe or all that, and I am a guy from Nakalva. So we used to have that at first. But the system was such that it's as if they designed it to equalize you. You can't wear any different fancy clothes.
Right.
You wear similar clothes.
You
live in the same dorm.
You had uniform.
Not really uniform by that. But you live in the same dorm, right? And you have, if you reach late to dining room.
The same
you don't get
punishment.
no food. You get the same fun. So it really helped a lot in equalizing all the people. But when we went in first, there were some persons,
trying to differentiate
who
themselves.
try them very best. I'm talking to, I can't think of some of them. But after we graduate and even now as old men, I mean, everybody just cool.
Yeah.
So I would be happy if a lot of Jamaicans went to things like that, boarding school and camp and cadet and army and so on, you know, because it helps to equalize you. And that's a nice thing about our school with uniform.
Right.
Because if we never have uniform, some people would
come dress up, right?
and they had this brand name and all that, and make the others feel left out and less than. But now the question you asked me, so that never troubled me. And then when I started to work, it didn't trouble me either. Now, in 1968, I had a job just before going to university, and then I was sent abroad on a short job-related training course. And when I was there, it was in Jacksonville. Now, this is a year when the first time I had a TV in my room watching Mexico Olympics live and see my favorite like John Carlos and Tommy Smith waving Black Power salute, and they send them home, right? And I decided that I was going to go to church. I think who says, no, you can't go to the church. Them don't accept black people in that church, right? I would have to go down the village to a Pentecostal or the Baptist church, but the church that was near, I couldn't go.
And that was
there.
1968 in
That was the same year,
Florida.
Jacksonville, Florida. Same year that Martin Luther King got killed. And so the heat was really on, and you're in the deep south, you know. And so that was, I said, hold on, people can't go to church because you're black. I never know this, right? And then now, like a week later, I had to fly. It was on United Airlines from Jacksonville to Pittsburgh. And I had a seat beside a white fellow. And the questions he asked me, at that time I never take it as any big deal. But later on, you look back, he must have figured what I doing on a plane.
Right.
You know,
it was unusual for him.
Unusual because I think I was the only black person in that plane, right? And so this was so, he didn't say anything. But when I look at the Trumpism now, I say, oh, this guy must was type. You know?
America great again, yeah.
Yes. And he was like, he was interviewing me for a job, you know.
Yeah.
You know, what I do, what my qualification.
But him really just trying to dig deeper to figure out why you are in this space
I'm here, because the average American black
wouldn't be
on a plane.
Right. At that time.
And not only that, I was the only person in the plane that was black. You know, so, and we're sitting beside
that time
him.
You would have been a doctor.
No, man, that is before the year.
What you say it was for? What was the course?
It's a course in lumber technology.
It's agriculture days.
No, past agriculture. I was working at Woolmanized Lumber down in Hardware and Lumber. Well, it was Leonard Cordova, and they sent me to do a course in lumber technology, and that course had 3 parts. It had Jacksonville, Pittsburgh, and Akron in Ohio. And so one part was observing lumbering and cutting board. Another part was observing formulation of chemicals that he used to treat. So that was up at Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh. These were like short little, on the job course. And then the last part was literally today treating lumber. And having said that, even though I don't see some of that, they treat lumber with fire retardant, that if a house catch a fire and you don't maintain the flame, the wood wouldn't burn.
Right.
We don't have that here, because they had to do that in order to get insurance.
Interesting. It's funny you mentioned how having an overseas experience colored your perception of race, and I would think from then it would have changed till now, but the same thing happened to me when I went to college too. I had a lot of unique experiences only in the US that I wouldn't have experienced before as a Jamaican. That made, actually I was very naive in the beginning until it happened over and over, and then you start to say, but this can be a one-off situation.
Yes, not a coincidence.
And
And it is done in a subtle way. Well, the British better at it than everybody else. I mean, the Americans, they will tell you off.
Yeah.
But the British are so politely
racist. Sometimes.
Because when I went to the postgrad now in UK,
as a doctor, right?
Yeah, as a doctor now. It so happened that a South African was on the ward with me.
Yeah.
And he had openly said to a nurse that no black people have the same intelligence like white. Now, if something was done, right, and he didn't know, there was a nurse on the ward who was really set on, and devil's advocate, and then says, well, so why you don't ask Dr. Guthrie?
Right.
And that he became from white to red.
Right, because she knew it would always trouble him.
And that time South Africa was in the throes of apartheid.
Right.
So he was
very
behaving
passionate.
the way he knew it,
right.
and wonder how he and I together in the same ward and I doing better than him. But I had a lot of experience at Jubilee and Spanish Town and all that.
And
him just learning.
I must have been very challenging for him.
Challenging for him because he was the one who made statement about inferiority as far as intelligence of black people, right? And so he had to swallow his word when every time you're going to theatre and you come out and you've done your work, and him struggling still.
Right. How about medical school? And I guess it's the same thing with the mixing of people. I figure medical school. No, you have people from the Caribbean at the time too?
It was more mixed than now. Because when I went to UA, which is 50 years ago, they never have no whole lot of campus other than engineering and agriculture.
Right.
So we had most of our class.
The medical campus.
Most of our class had chiefly Jamaicans. We didn't even have 100 people in our class. Chiefly Jamaican. Next, maybe Trinidad, then Barbados, then Ghana, and the islands scattered out. Even the current PAHO executive director, Dr. Carissa, that is in my class, right? And so you find out that we had a nice mix. And we didn't have a lot of color again. It was a lot of the Indians came from Ghana and Trinidad.
So they were Caribbean.
So we had
natives,
they were all Caribbean people. And I would say if there was any sort of clannishness, it was between black and Indian rather than white. And in my class, you had 2 white Americans who came to Jamaica to do medicine. And one of them was cool, drink, keep a beer, get drunk and all that.
Yeah.
And one of them was, I don't know if it was shy or was prejudiced, but you never really get out much with most people. But we didn't pay many mind.
He was probably just not a very social person.
Yes.
And what about the move from country to town now? Because, that is always a big conversation for people who come from country and how Kingston is different.
No, that is
what is that change now like for you?
That is big deal. But the thing about it is that my move from country to town was gradual. So it wasn't just a big culture shock.
You made your way across the island.
Yes, I made my way across the island. I was at Twickenham Park at school agriculture. So when weekend and other time, like movies downtown, usually catch a bus and go to Carib or when Baron Lee playing down at Victoria Pier on a Saturday afternoon, you go down there.
That's pre-soca Baron Lee. That is just band music.
That is early Baron Lee and Tommy McCook and all that. It was a regular thing right down at the end of Victoria Pier to have a Saturday afternoon concert. And then go down there. 2 reasons you got to listen to music and to look at the girls and them crinoline.
Crinoline of all the things.
Skirt so broad that if you're dancing with them, you have to stay about 2 feet. Yes, so we're talking about that. So the transition was smooth, right?
The transition from town to country was...
real country to boarding to Twickenham Park, which is not far from Kingston.
Right.
We used to take the bus. There were 3 buses going Spanish Town: Bronx, Western Flyer, and Penoverland Express. Those were the 3 buses.
And not numbers.
And they were pretty with red and blue and all kind of paint. And they stopped run at about 10:30 at night. So you better get on the last bus.
And then I can imagine Westmoreland. Well, it wouldn't be Westmoreland then.
That was just going to
Twickenham Park.
Yes. But then we come to live in town now and start to work. I never have write as EV, As I leave school agriculture, Friday start work Monday. You know, never apply for a job in my life, right? Because this thing just happened and it just flow. That's not quite true. I'd apply for the wood preservation job.
But overall you would say you flow from one thing to
another automatically. And so that was when, now, believe it or not, there were a lot of prejudices outside here. If you're going into Barclays Bank, which is now NCB, and you know Barclays is in UK still, and even down Eastern Caribbean. And if you're going to Barclays Bank, all the tellers, everybody behind the counter was either white or Chinese. And that's a white, Jamaica white people are Chinese.
Right.
And then
so it was a very deliberate hiring process too.
That Woolworth Times store, it seemed as if, right? I mean, I was looking in the lab, no work, but it seemed as if when you go in there, all of these people who
were in those positions
look the same.
Yeah.
Right? They weren't like we who buy in and getting served until that started to change gradually. You know, and even companies. I mean, the companies Wood Preservation, the company I used to work. I mean, the manager was David Henderson, and his qualification, he used to be an engineer on a ship, right? Actually, I was a person working under him and was more qualified than him.
Right.
Which was one of the reasons I left. Because when I left because I wanted to go to university. For what reason, I don't know. I just get fed up working with a man that getting better paid than me. And
you know more than him.
I know more. So I was planning to go to university to get a degree.
Right.
It never matter what degree.
Right, just to have the paper to ensure that.
To move up.
Right.
Which, as you know, now I'm bitterly against the education system because it is geared to pass exam rather than to learn.
Right, which is true. That's when people learn on their own now with YouTube and courses. Online, internet change everything about that.
Well, I remember going to Finland and see some little children in basic school and them not book anything, that just let them rule and they create so many things. The teacher just walk around and see what they're doing.
Yeah.
Because later on they start to guide them on to things, you know, and we don't do that.
Well, of course, without calling any names, you can think of any interpersonal, classist issues that stood out to you moving from country to town, or even as you're climbing up the ladder. Because I guess you're doing better, you're earning more money, you're making investments. Your life is changing. You know.
I'm lucky. The truth, I have not had a person. I know of cases where people got promotion over people. And people who weren't as qualified, the one who got promoted was not as qualified as the black one, right? And I know of cases like that, and that used to happen a lot in the bank. But as I say, me personally, I thought I never have no problem. It's as if I go university just because I want to go university, save my money, go university, and then eventually apply and do medicine when I was at university. Which I did, all that was accidental. And I remember going to UWI, and one day there was a person who was a counsellor. He interviewed me and asked me what my father name and all that, because there was this thing wherein a lot of persons had links. Right. I wasn't a politician's son. Right. And I wasn't a teacher's son or an inspector of police son.
So he was trying to dig into your family history to see.
And I tell him straightforward. You see, the trouble is when by the time I reached university, I was adult, drive my own car and all that. So
you live a lot of life. Right?
Yeah, so them people couldn't faze me. You know, if you leave straight from
high school and go straight,
university, you still see yourself like
kind of green,
like a green, and the teachers are still like masters over you. By that I was independent. What I do, and I would tell him straightforward. I remember I tell him, why you know my parents, they're not in your class.
Right. That time you should tell him Guthrie was Scottish. That's what you should tell him.
Yes, I should have. I didn't tell him. I just told him. And afterward, he might have been the person who influenced me to do medicine in the end. Right. In that he gave a talk once and said, well, you're in this university and many of you came here to do different things, and then you find out that midstream you might change. You know, and anybody here can do anything.
Okay, so he still had an optimistic outlook.
Yes, no, he was a nice person. Just that he wanted to see if you had if you're coming from good stock.
Right. You know, it's funny how in time they put pretty names and things that always existed. So now what you are describing in your career journey is what they refer to as universal flow, where you kind of just allow life to take you to however you move. If you want to do agriculture, you do it. If you feel pulled to medicine, you just try it and you just kind of move with it. Would you say socially, you were fortunate to just meet people who were good people?
Yes.
So that protected you in a way from a lot of the discrimination and the stories of classism. You just met good people.
Yes, met a lot of good people along the way. First one was my primary school teacher, a gentleman named Mary, always tell me that he want me to go and become a Rhodes Scholar and all that. Of course, my mother was powerful influence. Because my mother, her theory was that because I was always sick and she had to be taking me to the doctor, she said, why are you too weak? You can't do manual work, so you better take your book.
So she steered you away from trade. She steered
me away from doing
manual
a lot of, although I ended up doing a lot
of it anyway, yeah.
But everything they wanted me to do, I didn't. Because my mother wanted me to do a teacher and I didn't go. Although I had applied to go to Michael. My father wanted me to do a minister of religion and I didn't become a minister of religion.
That's interesting. And he was the farmer. I never thought he would have wanted to go that direction. But he became very religious, or was always
he was always religious. As a matter of fact, although he was an Anglican, my mother ended up winning him over and he became Seventh-day Adventist more than she was a Seventh-day Adventist in the end. But then again, the women always win, you know.
What month was he born again?
My father?
Yeah,
I think May.
May, okay, right.
Yes.
And all right, so overall, it would seem that you lived a comfortable life in terms of your racial perception. So you were never ever insecure about your blackness.
No, I have not. And then when you get older now, I think it is more not me but people. I have seen a couple times, and it's not one time it happened, and I could call Jamaican name, where somebody was referred to me as a person who is a specialist in an area, and they were a bit surprised to see this little black man, right? Because, you know, so they said, oh, I never know, I said, Dr. Guthrie, look. And then I'm tempted to be rude and say, well, I'm not big, tall, and white.
Right. But you leave it alone.
But I leave it alone.
I mean, and I have to throw this in for people because my friends know how you are, that you still, even though you're a doctor, that you're still the type of person who will go into the market, you will take public transport, you will take taxi, that you don't have any ears about those things.
Well, the nicest thing to do is to catch a JUTC bus. You get some stories that you never. I'm in Red Hills, and I know all my buses from downtown. That 30 come through Pembroke Hall, 31 come through Duane Park, 46 and 47 come up Crossroads.
Right.
And I take them to Chancery Street and take the little bus now, come up the hill.
And I remember, I know you listen. Go
when
ahead.
you take the little bus, come up the hill, they get even more stories. Not only that, sometimes you have to be right under somebody.
Those buses are not COVID friendly. How are them coping in the pandemic though?
I don't know. I've taken it
they can't pack them up.
No, since the pandemic.
That's a good question. I'm not sure,
I don't take it, but I remember taking it and then you right under
somebody's arm, yeah.
Man, and it smells strong.
That is interesting. It reminds me of the episode. I know you listened to this one with Simone Brown, who said she doesn't drive and she still takes public transport because for her it is important to kind of keep her foot on the ground and be in touch.
And if I was into something that I was somebody who produced things,
right, like a filmmaker,
and the play, I would
be out in the streets because that's where all of the life is. Yeah.
And let's face it, between you and I, as you know, when I in UK and things, I've got Paris, I've got China, it's not car driving. I take public transportation. So when I'm here, I'm not afraid of it. And the most things I'm afraid of is that one occasion, shortly after I was about to take a bus, I was everybody jumping off, and one guy was on there with gun robbing people.
Right.
I wasn't on it,
but
they were getting out when I was planning to get in.
Right, so they protect. You dodge that one.
But before you move on, I was saying something about the race. So yeah, we have had a few, people from white people who have seen as patients. And some of them are not Jamaican, like English or American, or one of my good friends, she was from Hungary and thing. And so that was and when they come and see you and you're going to do something major for them, like surgery, sometimes they're researching you before they even come to you.
Right.
You know?
So
because they think, I don't know if it's because
what if they could just be research oriented
exactly.
and it might be cultural too, that they would be more inclined to check you out before.
And some of the Jamaican ones too, some of the very light skin, a certain group, and you make a diagnosis and it's something that you could easily treat here for a fraction, and then they call you back and say that if you can refer them, give you a letter of the result, because they take it to Miami or to some place. And I like to make them go on, because suppose me go do it and them get complication.
Then it would be because it was from
usually most of the complication is the other way around. They go there and they come back with the complication.
Right, and I guess all of that again is really us playing our little game in our mind that we think that there's better elsewhere.
Yes.
Yeah, that is people's individual struggle.
Yes, that is.
Yeah, that is our individual thing.
And I mentioned Hungary, that Hungary and Russia were two more of my thing. I forget them. And I went to Hungary way back in 1981 on a family planning fellowship. And I was staying at a place, and I was the only black person around. And although anybody didn't say anything, well, I never know Hungarian, but you know people body language, and you have a few people that speak English. And you know that some people were really not so much into you. And that time in 1981, people from Eastern Bloc who have not been exposed a lot, because they were all a part of communist Russian USSR, they were prejudiced both in terms of color and against people from the West.
Right.
And so, although nobody did me anything, I remember being on a train and I was supposed to be met by a Jamaican who was studying in Hungary, and his girlfriend asked him how they going to know it's me. And the Jamaican said, well, it's the only black person going to come off on that train. And so said so.
Right.
You know?
Not hard to find it.
And the next time was I was with a group of doctors, chiefly from the States, in Moscow. I went to the Great Bolshoi to watch opera. And me, as my wayward self, break away from the group and on my own. And one guy come and he was really looking aggressive. And the person who was our tour guide come and run him off and then tell me that he was being rude. But me no Russian.
Right, so you never...
I knew he wasn't saying
something
hi,
nice.
How are you? but that was another thing.
Right.
That where he came right up in face and face with the devil.
How you feel about the black issues that happening now, like Black Lives Matter, George Floyd, like all of the things that you see now at your stage in life? What does it make you think about?
I didn't think it would still be happening, because if in 1968 I could not go into a church where everybody worshiping the same long-haired hippie-looking God, right? And I couldn't go into that church because of racism, I think that would have been gone long time.
Right.
And so why I am one of the person who upset. And the truth about it, I went to university at a time when Black Power ruled. Right? So my feeling about these things is very strong. Right? And so if I was there, maybe I would be at the front of the protest line.
As well, right?
Yes, as well. And maybe if I was there, I wouldn't be alive, because maybe I would be getting involved in things that would be
that would get you behind the bars.
Trouble. Yes.
You mentioned I had a question right at the top of my head. I was going to ask you. You mentioned the fact that, every now and again you have a little brush with somebody who might want to question your abilities based on how you look. Would you say you ever had moments where you had to prove yourself, or felt to prove yourself, or to correct anybody?
No, really, not really. I mean, the closest I came to that was that little South African fellow, Van der Werwin from South Africa. And looking back, he had come straight out of apartheid, and him
never have no chance. That was his perspective. Yeah,
he and a black fellow were doing the same thing on the same ward.
And all he has ever known is
white run things. And if you're in there and you're black, you used to Even when Wayne and I went to South Africa, we stayed at a hotel in Sandan City, and that was just about 3 years after South Africa got its independence, when Mandela took over. And everybody in that hotel, except the room attendant and the people who mopped the floor.
Right.
Everybody behind the desk, all of them was white.
White, eh?
Mm-hmm. I don't know what it is like now, because that's a few years.
Probably has changed a bit now.
Everybody was white.
All right. Well, as we come to the end, I guess I always liked when I ask people to give just advice and just commentary, and for young people growing up in Jamaica, particularly black people who may have issues with their color and and their social class and how it tied together. What you would say to them as someone who has come from rural Jamaica and moved to Kingston and made a better life for yourself? What would be your advice to maybe your teenage self or young 20-year-old self?
My advice is the same advice my mother told me when I was little, as I said to you, is that anything anybody can do, you can do it, and maybe even do it better. So if it has been done before, it can be done again.
Yeah.
And the thing to do is to get out of complex, because in Jamaica, the complex is not so much racial. I think the fact is that I'm one of the persons, maybe naive, who believe in our motto. I mean, Jamaicans are Jamaicans. We're not Afro-Jamaica or
right.
China-Jamaica or Indo-Jamaican. We're Jamaican, and everybody is not where you're coming from. That matter is where you're going. And that will be my parting shot,
I like that. I don't have anything else to say. All right, Dad. Always a pleasure talking to you, and I think they like this one too. I know you haven't listened to my episode yet, but now after doing this one, you'll see how the contrast will be interesting.
You're welcome.
But thanks as usual for your time, man.
Yes.
All righty.
Yeah, man. Good.
You've just listened to episode number 51 of Talk Trth with me, your boy Mario Evon, and that was my dad's black experience, which was very interesting to me and a conversation I really enjoyed. And if you contrast it to my episode last week, which was my black experience, in a way you'll realize that decades have passed and so many things remain similar, even though we had somewhat different experiences. And that remains interesting to me. And I'm glad that we were able to have these conversations in a Black Caribbean Jamaican context, so that you in the world who don't come from this side, or if you experienced it yourself, will get a bit of perspective on what the different generations experience in this context. Thank you again for listening. Thank you for always supporting. And of course, follow us on all our social media. It's mainly everywhere TLK TRTH. That's at TLK TRTH. That's Talk Truth without the vowels, except for the website, which is talktruthja.com, and the email address, which is talktruthja@gmail.com. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, as it really helps to make a difference in how these episodes do online. I really would appreciate some reviews. And like last week's episode, I loved that people really took the initiative to put comments under the Instagram post. This episode will also eventually have a video component which will come up on YouTube, so you can actually see Dad and I having the conversation in real life. So look out for that. But until then, check out this audio, check out the audio version on YouTube, subscribe to my channel on YouTube, and just show us a lot of love. We really appreciate it. So you just listen to Talk Trth, and I'm your host, Mario Evon, and this is the place where your truth shall become your power and set you free. Until next time, big up on yourself.